Yell about Harvey.
All right. I think we're live.
Harvey.
Hi. I want to welcome everybody to the Summer Games Done Quick 2024 RPG Speedrunning panel / roundtable. I'm Moonblaze Wolf. I speedrun RPGs, and I thought it would be a really cool thing to bring kind of like a genre-specific panel for a genre that is so important to video games and so important to speedrunning to GDQ this year. So I'm very honored to be joined by three amazing speedrunners, RPG speedrunners, and we're just going to be here to kind of talk about some stuff that we have learned over the years of learning to speedrun and continuing to speedrun RPGs. We hope some of that information is helpful to you, and at the end we will have time for any questions that you might have for us as well. So I'm Moonblaze Wolf. I use he, they pronouns. My main games, RPGs that I run are Final Fantasy X, Super Mario RPG, the remake. I also played a bunch of the SNES randomizers, specifically Free Enterprise. That was kind of my intro into speedrunning. And yeah, some other stuff as well. I've run Chained Echoes at GDQ and RPG Limit Break, the glitch category, and then I ran the glitchless category at this last RPG Limit Break here in 2024. So that's a little bit about me. Let's just go down the line, do some intros.
Sure. Hello, my name is Zick. You may know me as the guy that can't kill an antlion in the GDQ finale. I speedrun many different Final Fantasy games, being it 4, 5, or 9, or 10, and some other oddball RPGs like Okage Shadow King or Ape Quest specifically.
Ape Quest.
I also disappointed in the lack of an actual round table here for the round table.
Sure, yeah.
So I will pass it off to my right here.
All right, so I'm Sanjan. You might have seen me on Tuesday speedrunning Mass Effect 2. I unsurprisingly also speedrun RPGs. Oh my goodness! But I specialize in multiple different kinds. I do both Western and JRPGs, though I more lean into JRPGs, but I have a love for Western RPGs. So you definitely might have seen me doing a lot of Octopath in general. So I've started with Octopath for a lot of it, but I've delved into games like Pokemon, Xenoblade, a little less so, but I delved into Final Fantasy amongst some other games.
And I'm Poexel. You may have seen me run Lufia 2 for SGDQ about 2 nights ago, and yeah, I guess I mainly specialize in 16-bit turn-based and action RPGs by Square, Quintet, other groups, and a little bit of dabbling in Game Boy and other stuff along the way too.
Yeah. I know you're still anxiously waiting your physical copy of Chained Echoes. It's been
about a year and a half since I ordered it. Yeah.
Understandable.
Someday.
Physical media. Oof.
Yeah, it's a thing for sure. So, okay. Well, we thought we would kind of just kick things off a little bit lighthearted. RPG speedrunners are a little bit of a special bunch. I think we can all agree. So we came up with a list of top 10 reasons why you may be or become an RPG speedrunner. So we'll kind of go through those now. Number 1, people tell you that you have a very soothing ASMR voice and cozy vibes.
I feel like this describes my stream because I've had streams where, like Octopath streams, where like everyone's just like, I'm just honestly here for the music, and I'm just because I don't because like generally like I focus since I'm sort of a tryhard, and then everyone's just like, I'm also just here to listen to, like, here for the resets and listening to good music, and I'm just like,
guilty
I love
as
that
charged.
For you.
Yeah. Quexel's very cozy. And yeah, nothing like listening to an awesome RPG soundtrack, right? With potential speedrunning that may or may not happen alongside that. So, all right. You're comfortable just sitting in one spot for hours at a time. And you have a really comfy chair. Maybe you're qualified to be an RPG speedrunner. I don't know.
I should find an excuse to get up at any chance I can while I'm running.
Yeah, I got to take those stretch breaks, right?
Yes. Yeah. There are plenty of RPGs where you can take stretch breaks, but don't forget to take care of yourself before doing that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Hydration breaks good too.
Yes. Snacks. Anybody have a favorite mid-run snack you want to share?
I got Cheez-Its.
I've done the Cheez-Its. That's not bad.
Well, back way earlier in my career when I used to run Final Fantasy 7 and 9, I'd often have pre-made sandwiches and other snacks in my fridge to dash out to get to and consume during FMVs.
Yeah. You enjoy discussing lots of lore during your speedruns.
So Final Fantasy V, we've done the timing that Final Fantasy V, at least the Pixel Remaster, is like somewhere around a 3.5 to 4 hour speedrun with an hour and 55 minutes of cutscenes in it. So there's plenty of lore to go through.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started on the Xenoblade, because I ran Xenoblade 2 for a time, and there's like multiple like 10 minutes of just like holding up on the control stick, and then I would get fans who would just come in and would just like talk about the Xenoblade lore for hours on end. And I consider myself more like a casual Xenoblade person. I'm more of a big Xenosaga fan, which I want to speedrun Xenosaga 2 sometime. That was a great run at RPG Limit Break. And like it's just like hearing these people like talk about wild like theories about Xenoblade stuff. I'm just like, I respect the play.
A kind of lore I've learned people have very, very strong opinions of: name pronunciations.
Oh no!
Like Team Titus or Titus, anybody?
I definitely wasn't having that exact debate with somebody yesterday. No, definitely not. Have you ever, in your speedruns, because of like cutscene skipping or anything like that, ended up with things that are so completely nonsensical you just make up your own lore for what happened?
Final Fantasy X cutscene remover is hilarious sometimes.
I mean, Mass Effect speedruns have their own lore. It's called the speedrunner's lore. I made up my speedrunning headcanon myself because I am very into Mass Effect lore.
Yeah. I remember enjoying watching somebody make up his own story for Final Fantasy IV in the cutscenes, and like Cecil now telling Rosa that he's quitting his job with the Red Wings to become a full-time Twitch streamer.
All right, number 4. You're a night owl, ready to anchor that overnight block.
Yep.
Are you actually a night owl, Puexel?
I am, but my employer is not. So
Okay.
It's a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
When you get a long RPG speedrun in, and they're just like, especially for like GDQ, you're just like, I'm ready for that overnight.
I remember Foxy's FF10 run at GDQ that was at like 3:30 in the morning, and I was dying. We were perishing.
Yeah, it definitely happens. Chained Echoes. So my first GDQ run, well, my only GDQ run, but it was Chained Echoes last year at SGDQ 23. And that one had the unfortunate experience of, I think it started or on the original schedule, it was supposed to be at like 12:30 or maybe 1:30 a.m. And then just by the time, you know,
it was like 2 or something.
It was like
that.
3 in the morning.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was. You know, the fates intervened and just put it in the overnight block anyway, where it belonged. So
yeah, adrenaline, caffeine, and hype power me through those runs.
Yeah. I felt very bad coming to you and the other commentators and just being like, oh yeah, by the way, it's gonna be like 3 now. Thanks, appreciate it. This is a new one. You're totally fine with letting other people name your characters.
For me, this only applies to FF1, but I actually, like, when I was running FF1 Pixel Remaster, I made a script that automatically inserts names, so I would have themes. I only did 2 themes, like, during my time, but one of them was, like, streamers. and then the other one was just, like emote names. So, like, I would pull in, like, the most unhinged emote names out there, and then, like, everyone was just like, this is like the worst combination of like emotes or like people. I would basically treat FF1 as just like, Speedrun just like, alright, we put in these streamer names, now it's going to be like this unfortunate show where they're kind of isekai'd into there, and then they're forced to work together to complete a speedrun, and then like only like 0.1% of them make it through.
Yeah. I enjoy getting an RPG into a marathon and then having naming incentives, and like the days leading up to it, watching the incentive, be like, I want that one to win, not that one, not that one.
Can't believe I'm gonna have to say that name for 4 hours. Please no. Someone sniped this.
That was me during my FF run, because someone put like a really like funny meme, and I'm just like, I can't believe you would do this to us.
Please let me name Garnet Hot Dog, please.
Yeah, I mean, almost all of the games I've run that have let you name characters, you have to name them like one letter or something to save all the frames. So if I'm practicing for a marathon, I'll have to practice not doing that. And I like to come up with themes too, like Disney characters or names of candy bars or stuff like that.
Yeah. All right.
On the flip side too, I'm also wondering if someday an RPG speedrunner will have a child that they name A or something in order to just optimize filling out forms like birth certificates and stuff too.
That would, that child having to explain to people why that's their name.
Yeah.
That's terrible. That's tragic. All right, number 6. Oh, I forgot to put this on here. Routing in bathroom breaks is a special kind of challenge that you are down for.
I have a funny story because my friend ran Scarlet and Violet in the early days, and then he started posting all the times where he because Turbo was allowed for it, and he just posted all the times where just all right, this cutscene has a 4-minute break or turbo break, and then he just had a long text file, and I'm just this is an RPG speedrunner vibe, especially when you run long speed runs.
Yeah, I think there was one like that out there for FF9 as well, where it's just a document that just has all the cutscene lengths and how long you can walk away for.
Yeah. Funny enough, I run the longer Octopath categories, and the second longest one has a mandatory 8-minute break, so it's just in the middle of the speed run, so it's just it already promotes a healthy break.
Now you're getting into shower break.
I was just about to
territory,
say my favorite RPG speedrun lore is taking a shower during FF10.
Yep.
I'm amazed people could do that in sub 10 minutes, but
I greatly appreciated that when we had the PS2 version of FF10 at Limit Break, all of the runners just got up and left during that cutscene too, with the joke that they were going off to shower and eat and stuff too.
Not at that hotel though. That walking to any room in that hotel was miserable.
Yeah, I do think that was one of the funny things. So you mentioned the Final Fantasy X cutscene remover.
Yeah.
So that is actually a little bit of a double-edged sword to that, because you took out all my bathroom breaks.
You
what
get
am I
no
supposed
breaks.
to do? It's there's one break that's kind of conceivably long enough for that, and it's after you get in the Blitzball game, and you're you still have to kind of count down the first half of the Blitzball game. So, but that can go badly.
Hide behind the goalie.
Yeah, exactly. You go hide behind the goalie. You go Keepa, and then you can go take a break. But yeah, it can be rough. I will say, I think more recently I've seen more communities being proactive about just saying this run is too long. All the modern games have I shouldn't say all, but a lot of the modern games have the in-game ability to skip cutscenes. Mm-hmm. So I think most communities with games like that have been able to just say we have figured out a way to let you have a break during the run.
Yeah.
Even if it's an untimed break that then just sort of gets built into the process, because speedrunning a game shouldn't be about that. So
Yeah.
So, but yeah, moving along. Oh, I love this one. Nothing gets you more hyped up during a speedrun than a good menuing sequence.
Yep.
Let's go menuing. I love that. I remember, I think one of my favorite menuing sequences was Mutski doing a blindfolded menu of FF9 at RPG Limit Break. That was a good one. I like that one a lot.
No, on FF9, nothing's worse than a bad menu. In the FF9, the PC release, the menus feel so bad that it is just not fun.
Okay. I will say, you have a blindfolded fight menu thing.
Yeah, I've done blindfolded fight menus, and it wasn't too bad, but it was just you kind of had to build up the muscle memory. But I will say Octopath menus are probably one of the most satisfying menus I've ever done. That's why I still love speedrunning. I think that's my number one thing that will get me to like a speedrun is good menuing sequences.
Yeah, I mean,
I have to say Golden Sun's up there.
The kind that I appreciate the most too is menus where you have to you have to think too. It's not everything is by rote. It's reacting to RNG or stuff like that. If you can still have 4 different scenarios you're selecting from, and all of them are muscle memory. I mean, I find that mad impressive. Like top level Japanese Dragon Quest runners. Or
I like watching
wizards with that.
Or I like watching Super Nintendo FF6 runners where you're moving items around mid battle in your menu while you have downtime.
Yep.
Yeah, stuff like that. Have you ever? So I have this experience a lot where, like, while I'm actually menuing, I don't feel particularly fast, but then I'll like watch a VOD back later, and I'm just like, oh, that was actually pretty good. Yeah.
It always feels slower in the moment sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. Number 8. Anyone can do a boss fight. Can I interest you in a super boss fight?
Been there, done that. Though recently, Octopath 2 released the bigger, the super boss fights, which the Japanese speedrunners have like kind of routed something out for it, and I'm curious to see like what's gonna happen. But yeah, I literally just last or at SGDQ did a speedrun based on a super boss fight. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the incentive at Limit Break and FF5 for Omega, which at the time of submitting it, I don't think anybody had really routed it for Pixel Remaster, and they were like, hey, can you do this? And I was like, I'll figure it out.
I got to do the super boss fight in Chained Echoes when I did my glitchless run at RPG Limit Break this year, and that was an interesting challenge because it's part of the all bosses category, but I don't think anyone had ever really thought too hard about how to actually do the fight other than just kind of brute force it until you win. So it was pretty fun to figure out some strategies for that and maybe some optimizations and things like that. So.
Yeah, I have a lot of appreciation for like the Kingdom Hearts runners too, just because those games are chock full of super bosses, and a lot of them are just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna kill this impossible fight at level 1.
I was gonna say, I love that it keeps evolving. We'll do it at level 1. We'll do it blindfolded.
Yep.
Like,
they're just built different.
Shoutouts to Kingdom Hearts 2 later tonight, by the way. Also, now that you mention it, I'm sure that'll be some good stuff in there. So, all right, number 9. Arby's is your favorite fast food.
Can I make a confession? I've never been to an Arby's before.
Okay.
I don't think you're missing too much.
For reference, I live in like a really Asian neighborhood, so I don't eat much American food. It's like whenever I go to like GDQs or something, it's just my first real big like taste of like, all right, American food, or like what Western food, I should say.
I will say, just as a personal thing, and I truthfully don't know the genesis of this whole thing. I know it is in deep lore.
Oh,
okay.
You gotta explain the lore.
That's probably proof of my ancient status, but basically it was a Final Fantasy IV SNES run at a earlier AGDQ, like
I think it was 15.
15.
It was my
sounds
first
about
GDQ.
right,
I
yeah.
remember it.
Okay.
And I think it was Spike Vegeta just put in a donation that he was promoting on social media or whatever to name Edge Arby's, and that started basically an arms race between people on site at the venue and the French restream community
I will never
over
forget
that bid war.
Yeah, I will never forget, because that was my first GDQ. I was watching that FF4 on live, and there's Spike sitting on the floor in the audience just yelling Arby's at the top of his lungs.
Shout out to the French speedrunning community too. They're awesome people.
I will confess, I love to go get Arby's after a PB. That is like my victory meal sometimes, unironically. So, all right. And last but not least, you need something to do when you're not playing the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, which has a free trial and includes the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heavensward expansion and the Stormblood expansion up to level 70 with no restrictions on playtime. Sign up and enjoy Eorzea today.
Okay, so question though. What if you're Chris Tenarium and you run FF14 MSQ for your birthday every year as a speedrun? That's his birthday present to himself.
Some people just they can't be helped.
I confess I downloaded FF14, but as a mostly RuneScape type of person, I'm scared of opening it up because there's so many RPGs that there's so MMORPGs are just like a huge time sink. Before I was a speedrunner, I played a bunch of RuneScape and I was like in some high level communities.
So who in here is Dawn Trail? Anybody? Okay, he's literally playing Dawn Trail in the panel audience. No, I actually will say I just included this for the memes. I will be completely transparent and honest. But Dawn Trail just came out. I know a lot of people are really excited about Final Fantasy XIV. I personally played it before they dropped a meteor on it. But Final Fantasy XI, I did a ton of Final Fantasy XI, so I get it. Yep.
It is a cool speedrun to watch, the FF14 speedruns.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've seen them. We've had them on my marathon before, and they're a lot of fun. Had one on one of the online GDQs, I want to say as well. Maybe 2022.
Yeah, Path of the Dead or something like that.
Yeah.
Palace of the Dead.
Yeah,
Palace of the Dead. Okay.
Yeah, so they were very fun, and we had RuneScape.
Yeah.
Yesterday.
I'm really happy to see like more MMORPG speedruns come to light because honestly, like a lot of like RuneScape speedrunning is very precise and like very like.
And it's not something you think about, but a lot of work goes into those.
A lot of work goes into it because like you really have to understand the system and like you have to be precise.
Yeah. And I know it wasn't an RPG, but also we had Destiny yesterday.
True.
So shout outs to MMOs getting into GDQ. That was really cool to see as well. So, all right. But seriously, why do we speedrun RPGs? Like, I know that was kind of a mix of some funny stuff and some silly stuff and some reflective stuff about what's cool and what's sort of unique about speedrunning RPGs. But I mean, let's just kind of go down the line. Like, Zick, we'll start with you. Like, what do you like about speedrunning RPGs?
Yeah, I mean, my love for RPGs has gone back since I was a kid. I mean, I've grown up on Final Fantasy games. They've been my favorite games since I grew up. So it was only natural at some point that I really, been into speedrunning for ages, wanted to check it out. And there's something just so unique and different about speedrunning an RPG that's so unlike any other kind of speedrun out there. And there's just something so satisfying about, getting a really hard boss strat or doing a really tough menu and something just like, it feels very, or when something goes wrong, you have to improv to figure it out. And that's just such a really cool thing. And on top of that, they are definitely one of the most friendly, tight-knit communities I've ever been in. Is some of the, because I mean, some of the RPGs especially, there's not a lot of people that run them. So as soon as somebody's like, "You're a runner? Come. We will take care of you."
You're safe with me, my
Yes.
sweet summer child.
Don't leave, please.
Pray come hither.
All right, so I got into speedrunning RPGs just mainly because it was a Steam achievement I need to do for Octopath.
Shout outs to Steam achievements.
But my love for speedrunning stuff is just like the adrenaline of being able to go fast and also beat the stuff that I've always wanted to beat but had trouble beating. I get satisfaction for that, but also being able to connect in a unique way with people. Just for the game, I mainly speedrun a lot of stuff that I have nostalgia for, which is a lot of popular RPGs, especially BioWare RPGs, and then Pokemon and the such, and then it's just a way for me to show my love and for the lore and the game in a different fashion. And it's also nice because I like longer speedruns because if I did all short, my attention span would go down. It help doing RPG speedruns helps me keep my attention span.
Sure. I guess as for me, I mean, I like just challenging myself with games that I like, and something that I feel is kind of unique to speedrunning RPGs too is that just since RPGs tend to be on the longer side, tens if not hundreds of hours for a casual play, it's kind of hard to just say, oh yeah, I'm just gonna do a playthrough Final Fantasy X this weekend or something like that. That's generally not too easy, but if you're doing a speed run of one is in ways is kind of reliving the casual play experience in a very condensed time frame, and I say that both as a runner and a viewer too. There's numerous RPGs that I don't run myself, but I love watching other people run them just to kind of relive my experience of playing it in a much tighter time frame. I like listening to good music when I do speedruns too. I freely admit that's a non-zero factor in picking games to speedrun is how much I enjoy the music, because I know I'm going to be hearing it a lot. I also just like kind of the wow factor in blowing people's minds about being able to beat a game that normally takes about 40 hours or so casually in 5 or less typically too. I feel like for RPGs, that's kind of the difference between a speed run and a casual play is a lot wider than most other types of games.
Yeah, I think just to echo a lot of what everybody was saying, I think these games just mean a lot to people, and it really feels good as a streamer or a speedrunner to be able to bring that to people in a way that they can actually access. And it was really occurred to me recently, I've been learning Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster, and you get to the opera scene, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is the best. This is just one of the coolest scenes in all of video games, and I get to see it 3 times a week when I'm practicing. So, just yeah, stuff like that. So.
Have you sung it yourself yet, though?
I could if I had to. Perhaps for charity.
Yeah. Back when I used to, I mean, I even had notes for how to sing it in foreign languages too. Back when I was more active in that game.
Yeah.
I found an Elbed translation of the opera
Really?
too. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is great. All right, so we just have kind of a couple different topics that I think we wanted to cover as part of this panel to sort of share our experiences. So the first is just how do you approach kind of speedrunning an RPG? And I'll throw a couple different prompts at all of the panelists here to just talk about things that they think of when, they approach a certain aspect of it. So I guess the first question I would have is, and maybe Zik especially, I think this might be a good one for you,
Okay.
is like, how do you find speedrunning an RPG to be different than speedrunning other types of games?
Yeah, so I have a lot of experience speedrunning anything from, I did Sly 4 earlier this week. I don't remember what day that was. The days blend together. Wednesday morning. But so I have experience running platformers and RPGs and anything under the sun. Weird, silly, awful games. And, definitely the learning process is different. Some platformers you could pick up in an hour and go to play. And RPGs, sometimes you can spend all day learning one and still not be able to finish your first run. So it's definitely, some of them have a little steeper learning curve to them, and sometimes require a little more, whether it's notes from the community or just interacting with the community, asking like, hey, why is this boss reacting like this? What item did I miss here or there? And there's a lot of research and a lot of just kind of prep work that can go into speedrunning an RPG, and especially if you get into longer RPGs, there's a lot of even, for me, whenever I'm running, if I'm running Final Fantasy IX, I always say it's almost like an event myself I have to prep for. I'm like, okay, do I have myself snacks? Do I have myself a lunch I can go get? Do I have my day blocked out for it? So it's definitely different in that sense. And then, you lose your run an hour in, and then you're like, do I have the time to start another one?
Yeah. That's very true also. Anyone else?
I think there's kind of multiple ways to approach it, but the best way I found it is just you kind of the biggest thing is just find some notes for it. You can lurk in a Discord community or just look at the website. I know some people don't like having to join it. Just lurk it and just sit in the corner. But basically what I like to do is just okay, I just need to know I'll confess, when I learned FF1, I hadn't played it casually. So the thing that I like to do is I just like to watch PV videos, and that's not just the world record video. That's a lot of the other videos. If I come from a perspective of someone who is kind of a tryhard and wants to be very good at stuff, and for me, I just will double down and invest a lot of time in watching every single PV video, but also understanding where did they go wrong, where's the RNG in it, what do I need to focus on, type of stuff, and then I'll go through through it in notes. For longer speedruns, I will just break it down in chunks and not only try to understand the mechanics, but also why the pieces might connect together, because maybe something that you do an hour in matters a lot for 3.5 hours in, and I need to take note of that. And if you're comfortable with that, just go into the Discord and just ask a lot of questions, because a lot of the RPG speedrunners will be very happy to answer.
Yeah, well, I guess I wrote down just a couple tips, basically, and just kind of general stuff I've done to approach speedrunning RPGs. I guess one is just to kind of just look for resources, like if there's guides and videos and stuff of the run you're interested in, check those out. But even not really speedrun-centric resources can often be useful, just like FAQs about the game that might give you some insights into how damage formulas work, or stats and stuff like that. Don't be afraid to look at those. Look for, especially if you're new to a run, look for consistent strategies too. Like that's something that's often you're not going to get out of watching the world record. Like
that's a very big thing too. This like for new people, I just suggest you don't need to go fast. Just do it consistently. Like just make sure you get a run done. No, like. And then just build yourself up into the more like faster and more riskier strats.
That's always my philosophy, is just if I want to finish runs consistently if I want to, and then if I decide I enjoy the run enough to really want to challenge myself and try to push the game to its limits, then I'll start taking a lot more risks and stuff like that. But starting out, just try to find consistent strategies, and like watching marathon runs, I think, is often a good place to try to get information like that too. I guess figuring out like a good practice strategy for kind of that works for you. Like, I mean, I work full time, so I don't really have time to like do multi-hour streams outside of weekends most of the time. So if I'm like on a PB grind for a game, I'll usually do segment practice in between actual attempts. And then I usually have I set up a pretty wide array of like practice saves or save states for the game to kind of just whip through and practice specific fights or menuing sequences or stuff like that. I guess I always recommend trying to finish runs even that make like major mistakes or that sort of thing if you can too, because that may lead to route improvements or figuring out new backup strats, or that sort of thing. Helping think outside the box. Like, I guess also don't be afraid to make new rule sets or categories too. Like, there's been numerous times where I've just I like a certain game, but there's just something about the main way that people are running it that reduces my interest. Like, and I've just like, okay, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do like a glitchless category for like a game that's never had that done before, or something like that. And there's been a few times where other people have picked up my rule set, and it's become somewhat competitive and that sort of thing. And then the last one I had was to make use of downtime, because a lot of RPGs have some kind of downtime, whether it's loading screens, just text mashing, or even full-on input breaks where you don't even have to hold the controller. And you can, even if it's not where you can actually get up and walk away to use the restroom or get a snack or something, you can make use of downtime to like study notes, kind of think about what's still to come, and also relax too. Like, I feel like just having some time to that I don't have to just focus on the game for like a few seconds or even minutes in some cases is kind of underrated too, as far as kind of helping with the endurance aspect of beating an RPG in one sitting.
Yeah, I think there's definitely times where you're more on autopilot and you can be thinking about what's coming, and then there's times you definitely do not want to be on autopilot because you have to be thinking about how you might have to improvise. And yeah, I'm in a big agreement with a lot of what was said. I liked your point too about watching marathon runs, and I think part of that is because a lot of times it can be really hard. Like if you're just a streamer and you're kind of grinding attempts or whatever, like you don't want to have to explain why you're doing what you're doing, especially in like a world record attempt or something like that. Like you just need to be really focused. But you put somebody in a marathon setting, they got to have something that they're going to talk about for 4 hours or whatever it is. So then they're going to really get into those explanations and other things like that too.
And they're going to get into like more like, safer, more consistent strategies, because generally in a PV you're just taking a risk or going all in.
Yeah. Just understanding why, because there is so much variance in these games a lot of times.
Yeah, and understanding like things that didn't happen in the run that the runner was still looking for or having to make decisions around and that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing I really like that you also touched on, Poexel, is just finishing runs. I remember running Final Fantasy IX, and a good friend, fellow FF9 runner, Bomb Bomb, he would always say, number one, he'd say to people that people would always obsess over their disc 1 time, you know, because like a good disc 1 is like 2 hours 16 minutes, and people are trying to get a 2:18, like, oh, it's bad. He's like, disc 1 does not matter. He's like, just finish your runs, get consistent. It will play so much better than trying to just grind for the perfect start of the run. And I just remember him always saying, just like, it does not, the first 2 hours do not matter in the grand scheme of things.
And I will just say, too, I've had so many times where I had a run that was dead. Like, I knew I wasn't going to PB, but I just kept going, and I either experimented with something that I wasn't totally sure about, or I figured out something that I didn't really know as a result of, just taking a little bit more, like not a casual approach, but like the pressure level was down, and I was just able to think a little more. It's like, oh, I finally get it, or like I learned this thing now that I didn't understand really before.
Yeah, you really learn and improve when things go wrong. And if you never let things go wrong, you never...
That's a perfect way of putting it.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to take that risk, but also like sometimes like when you're starting out, just you don't need perfect times. You don't like... I will say like, for a lot of people, it's just like you don't need a leaderboard to kind of show how good you are. It's like the fact that you're trying an RPG speedrun, or just like you're getting your feet wet, you're doing your first couple runs, even if it's terrible, you've made a big step. Like that's a huge accomplishment in itself.
Listen, my first speedrun of Ape Quest was me and my friend Skate Man going, oh, look, funny monkey game. Let's just do a race of it. And then we played, and I was like, I kind of like this game. And it was a mess.
And I will I think in the words of like one of my fellow close friends, Quadra, is don't look at just like one segment and just like it's like, oh, like it's all over. It's just like try to think of it overall, because like you might not think about it, but there's plenty of time saves, especially in the long run. And like if you feel more comfortable going for it feels good to finish a run, so sometimes consistent strats are just better than like way riskier strats.
Yeah, no, and I always tell people one of my philosophies never, and this isn't just for RPG speedrunning, but just speedrunning in general, is like sometimes I'll learn a game and I'll go, all right, my goal time right now, I don't know, we'll say that I'm running a game and my goal time is 50 minutes, world record's 41, and I'm like, yes, I could compare my splits to the 41, but that's not my goal. Sometimes I'll go watch the 50-minute run and see what they're doing and compare my times to that, because sometimes you'll find things they're doing that the first 9 people on the board aren't doing. You're like, that's cool, why isn't anybody doing that? And sometimes they just get buried in 10th place.
I think it can also help to help you identify, and you talked earlier about practicing specific segments. That's something I'm really big on as well. Like you can kind of figure out like, okay, I'm really good at this segment, I feel great in this segment, boy, I really need to focus on that segment because I struggle with that. Like that's where I'm kind of losing a lot of my time right now.
I don't know about you, but I am terrible at Kefka and FF6 Pix Remaster. I am so bad.
I'm very inconsistent, I will put it that way. Yeah.
I will say also like when you approach speedrun, also self-reflection is good, especially if you're trying to like aim for a time. Just like you don't need to keep speedrunning something and just like throwing yourselves onto there. Just like take a step back and just like look at your VOD, just like kind of pinpoint out like, okay, like I lost this much of time because of this, or like why did this go wrong, and what I could have done, what could I do better for next time, and then just like pinpoint, okay, I need to practice this. Like you don't need to be constantly like throwing yourselves at a run. Like sometimes it is really good to just like take a step back.
Yeah. And it can be really good for your self-confidence too, just to identify the stuff you are doing well, I think it's good to know both for sure. So so I guess we kind of talked about a lot of different things, but how do you all pick games that you want to learn or that you want to run?
For me, I mean, first up for me, it's a lot of like, a lot of the games, at least I've initially run, are games I loved when I was growing up, games that I just thought were really fun. Sometimes there's different aspects I take into account, like length. Like Puexel said, working a full-time job makes it kind of difficult to pick up a ton of 8, 9, 10-hour speedruns. So sometimes length does take into account for it. Like, oh, it's a little 3-4 hour run. I can manage that a little better than the super long run. But other than that, I just like to play through games. If I really enjoy it, hey, try a run. If I don't like it, cool. But I am guilty of sometimes just doing one and done runs that they're just, it was fun. It's cool to learn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, like, I pick games that I have nostalgia for. Like, of course, like, I played a lot of BioWare games, like Pokemon, but in reality, I'm a little picky just because I like games with good menuing. Mm-hmm. And then I would like to, like, it kind of depends on my mood. It's just, like, sometimes I want a game where I can quickly, like, throw myself onto, like, without any, like, huge, like, investment. Like, sometimes, like, I'll, again, like, get into Octave because it's very easy for me to get into, but sometimes, like, I'll get into something that requires, like, manips. Like, when I'm in a mood, I'll get into something like maybe like Pokemon Black, which requires, like, a lot of, like, upfront manip learning, where, like, for reference, Pokemon Black, the manip for each person is different based on your DS's MAC address. So you have to invest a lot of, like, upfront time in it.
Oh, wow.
But, like, just knowing, like, what you kind of, like, want. But I always kind of start with games that I liked to play casually through.
Yeah, it's really the same. I echo a lot of the other points too. I mean, for me, it's kind of a mix of nostalgia, how much I just enjoy playing the game, period. And then I guess something for me too is I like being able to leave some kind of mark on a speed game as part of doing it too. Like, that's part of why I often look for opportunities to, like, make a new category for an older game that where, like, any percent has already been pretty thoroughly solved and the record is really optimized. Like, if I can, I've gotten a lot of personal fulfillment out of just making my own rule set or category, so that I'm not starting from total scratch. There's going to be other resources I can make use of, but there's still a bunch of challenge and stuff as far as figuring out my route and that sort of thing. And good music. Good music is
very important.
is a must.
I would say for me, good music and good menuing is like number one, and will make me, like, stick to an RPG for a very long amount of time.
I'm gonna add one more thing because I think, Sanjan, you've run some fairly recent games. I don't know if Pixel Remasters counts.
I don't know if that counts.
I think the most recent one I've done, like, was Octopath.
Octopath, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and for me it was Chained Echoes, and I've had a few others since then, but I have had a few experiences where I felt like sometimes the game does kind of pick you in a way. Like, you just play a game casually and you're just, like, can't stop thinking about it, and then to me it does, I think maybe it's a little bit of, like, the inverse of what you said, Puexel, which is, like, I want more people to know about this game. So therefore, I want to figure out a way to bring this game to other people, to bring attention to it. And a speedrun can be really good at doing that. So I've definitely had a few games like that are within the last couple of years, where part of why I got so into speedrunning it was because I wanted to share it with other people as something cool that I found that I thought might be really satisfying for them. And then in the same way, like, that does kind of maybe become my mark, at least in the short term, as far as, you know, raising the importance level of that game. Like, maybe there's 100 people that wouldn't have even known Chained Echoes existed until I got to run it at GDQ or something like that. Or Small Saga is a game I ran at RPG Limit Break this last year, which is a super fun little game, but it was made by, like, one person, and it's really funny, and I just thought it would be fun to share that with people. So
Yeah, I definitely second that. I've been looking at one of my favorite PS2 RPGs, Okage Shadow King, that, like, 5 people in the world know about.
Sure.
And not only is it a game that, like, I love so much, and like you said, I really want to share that with people, but it also gives you, again, it's like, it's one of my favorite games, RPGs I've played, and it gives you another way to play through that game in a way that maybe I won't have a yearly replay of the game, but with speedrunning now I have a better excuse to replay the game.
Yeah.
That is
over and
basically
over.
a lot of my reasons.
Yeah.
Just, like, I get to replay, like, because I'm big on gameplay and, like, the RPGs that I like as well, and it's just, like, I get to experience that without, like, in a new form.
Yeah, for sure. No, cool. All good thoughts for sure. So, we'll do one more kind of little segment here that I really think that we have some different experiences with, and Puxel is on games committee for multiple events that looks at a lot of RPG speedrun submissions. So what are some things that you all would recommend to anybody who wants to get an RPG into a marathon? Maybe, do you want to start with Puxel and we kind of work this way?
Yeah.
this time?
That works for
Sure.
me.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of factors of runs that I look at when I'm evaluating RPG submissions for events I'm involved with, or I like good commentary. I mean, RPGs tend to be very cerebral type speedruns where there's often a lot going on behind the scenes that's not visually obvious from just watching. So I really want to see the runner and or friends just kind of explaining how the route works and how the strategies work and that sort of thing, and ideally in like a way that almost anybody that has casual knowledge of the game can understand. If it's a charity event, having good donation incentives is pretty good too. Like a lot of RPGs tend to be pretty heavily story-driven, so people that like the game often have very fond memories of the story experience too, and then therefore like being able to rename characters in the story or fight super bosses that are beating and that sort of thing is often a big draw for donations. Like we were kind of joking about with the graveyard shifts, having good availability to like being willing to play overnight if it's a 24-hour event is a plus. And then also just marathon safety and consistency too, like we've talked about a bit during this panel too, just projecting confidence that you will be finishing your run within your estimate is a good thing. I guess another thing is when talking about estimates too is I always recommend setting an estimate that's based on kind of a mediocre type run as opposed to just an absolute train wreck, because when one thing I do like to kind of compare to is the estimate versus the runner's PB, because like we're fully aware that doing a run for a marathon is not going to be competitive with a PB or record or anything, but if we notice a case where it's somebody's PB is 3 hours and the estimate's 4.5 or something like that raises some questions about how stable is this run or what's going on there. Or on the flip side, estimates 3 hours, PB's 255 or something like that. Yeah. Okay, what's going on there? Is it really that consistent or what's going on there? Another kind of subtle thing too is especially for a lot of older RPGs where text kind of cutscenes are unskippable and text draws out kind of slowly. A lot of high-level runs play like in Japanese or other languages, but I really like to see English text for marathon runs because it kind of goes back to how RPGs often have a lot of story focus to it too, and a lot of people that watch runs of RPGs, especially in marathons, kind of want to follow the story and kind of relive their own experience playing it, and having the language actually be readable to a Western audience is good for that, even if it may be several minutes slower for that particular game. And then the last thing I had was just don't be afraid to submit to smaller marathons too. Like if your end goal is to get into games done quick or bigger ones like that, having experience running your game in smaller events is really nice too. Not just for you personally, but I as an event organizer pay attention to other events too, and who's doing runs for them and that sort of thing. So just having some experience running your game in marathon settings is a great thing.
I want to kind of talk about this from the perspective of FF, because when we have a submission guide for FF, and I think something I want to kind of emphasize is ideally, this is just part personal opinion, and ideally when you submit a run, you have a marathon run already submitted for this. It is by far one of the best ways for a committee to see how the run is, and then the actual scope. The marathon can be charity or non-charity, though if you're submitted to a charity, ideally you have a charity. And then like the next best thing would just be like a submission commentary. Like, I think submission commentary is like, you know, you can't always like have it in the marathon before, which is like fine, but what submission commentaries like can miss is just like the marathon kind of feel of it. Because like you would have like your actual commentators with you and the host, because generally for like submission commentary it's just you. And especially if you have to talk for 4 hours, like that's a lot. And then like the next best thing, which is like not the most ideal, it's just like your PD. Hopefully it's voiced. Hopefully it has like voices, because like honestly, like in my experience in committees, like if I just saw something that like it didn't have like any like voice in it, or like nobody was talking, then my attention span just like goes out the window. And just like
post-run commentary is a possibility too that I've seen people do.
Yeah.
If their PB is unvoiced, basically just playing it back and commentating over it can make for a decent submission video.
Yeah, sorry, I should say like that's kind of like third in the chain, and then fourth is just like your PB. But I will say like for any of those that you submit, like YouTube has this great not thumbnail, kind of like timestamps.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Timestamps are, I would say, are extremely important, because especially at GDQ, when people are going through like hundreds of thousands of videos, they don't want to like, honestly, like they're not going to go through like everything, especially for like a 4-hour long RPG, and I don't know, they will most likely very much appreciate you, and I would too, because I've been on a committee for Frame Fatales, and they will appreciate you if you have a timestamp of like saying, oh, there's this really cool trick that we do, or like, oh, there's this really complex menu, like really cool strat that we do, like et cetera, et cetera. So I would say if you want to be a step ahead of the game, timestamps to show like cool parts of the run or like any nostalgia or whatever, very important.
Yeah, so with my experiences, I really like a lot of the things that Sanjan and Poixel touched on. A few more things to consider, especially if you're doing something in a marathon, is because there are some games that, unfortunately, like we'll use GDQ for an example, they only have so much time to work with. Some games are probably just too long. But there are times where you can look at, especially because in the recent years, GDQ has said we will accept submissions that aren't full game runs. So, you know, FF7, we'll do the Midgar section, or, you know, find a good point in your game where, like, you know, a good kind of halfway point. Like, I'll do, you know, I don't know, FF9, disc 1, submit that. And it's at least a nice, like, hey, if you can't accept this, here's an alternative that might fit better in the schedule. Along with that, there are things like Final Fantasy 5 or 10 have cutscene removers, which are another great way to get a game into a marathon if they're not maybe looking to have 1 hour and 55 minutes of cutscenes in the marathon. And I really like what Sanjay was saying about like having timestamps in your like descriptions of your videos, or there's different things you could do for, like, I know when Foxy Jira submitted the FF10 cutscene remover run that got accepted a couple years back, he actually just made like a little like 5-10 minute trailer basically of the run. He didn't even submit a PB as his video, and I thought that was kind of neat that they accepted it like that and just kind of highlighted the kind of best parts of the run in a short little trailer, which was kind of cool. And another thing with the two is, like Poixel said, incentives are very important. I know when I did Final Fantasy V, they reached out to me and I had a naming incentive. They were like, this is great, but we really want something to push for during the run to keep raising money. Because again, if they're going to allot hours of the marathon to a run, you know, it has to justify, we could put 5 runs in there that will all raise different amounts of money. Can you compensate for that? So having something to maybe an end game donation, like a super boss or something to push for during the run is also kind of important.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything to add. I just want to shout out a couple other marathons other than GDQ. I do think GDQ has been really great about accepting a variety of RPGs lately. Been a lot of really cool ones this year and in the recent ones as well. Really Longathon definitely deserves a shout out. If you want to play the long games, or even if you just want to play an RPG, most of them are probably a pretty good fit for really Longathon.
I love that marathon.
It's
Some of
great
the
marathon.
silliest stuff ends up on that marathon. I remember tuning in at the last one, and they had Super Smash Bros. Brawl it was like the whole like 100% category, and like, you know, one of the characters takes like 80 hours of just playing brawls to unlock, and the runners are like, he started up a brawl and then went to bed for like 6 hours. We have to get the time in.
Yeah, I would like to shout out also really, really long though, because you can also do like really unique stuff, like just like also watch cutscenes while like doing the speedrun. Like a lot of people are very much into that, and like I will also say GDQ is like not everything.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Also, want to give another shout out to the RPG Valkyries and Speedrun Ragnarok. That's another really good kind of like community-based marathon that does accept a lot of RPGs, and I think they're one of the only ones I know that is like a week-long event that is kind of a online-only, pretty like community-driven marathon. It's one of my first marathons that I was involved in way back when I got into speedrunning, so they definitely accept a lot of RPGs into that one as well, as you might suspect from the name. So
We forgot one of the big ones that.
Oh, did I not say RPG Limit Break? I'm so sorry.
I was wondering when you were going to get to that.
Have you guys ever heard of that marathon?
If you would like to learn more about RPG Limit Break, there are some cards on this thing up here. No.
Yeah, if there's anybody out there that doesn't know what RPG Limit Break is, though, it's an in-person charity event that's. I'm not going to say just RPGs because we've had some questionable games in our lineup, but over the years. But it's a marathon for fans of RPGs, basically, and in person too. Like we're the only in-person event that's focused on that. Like I was just kind of. Because we just had our event for this year about a month ago, and just something that just kind of hit me too is that I walked through the practice room and there were 6 people doing a race of Dragon Quest II with all different versions of it. And it's like, okay, where else in the world would that happen?
Yeah, I've watched RPG Limit Break online for many, many years, and last month was actually the first time I attended in person, and it's a very, very cool event, a very cool community to be a part of.
I think what actually got me into like the speedrunning community was like watching RPG Limit Break, because like I always felt like very much like at home, like watching like chill RPGs, and just for me to just like being able to attend it in 2022 when the RPG Limit Break started back up, it felt surreal, and I was like, oh my god, I'm actually here.
Hey, you know what got me into speedrunning is watching this guy and Spike play FF9 in 2 parts back at like GDQ 2013.
2013, yep.
I will gush and say the moment that hooked me on speedrunning events, and specifically GDQ, was my first in-person GDQ was SGDQ 2019, and this guy down here at the end did Chrono Trigger, and it was the first 3 million games done quick history, and the room was packed. It was electric. I've never experienced anything like that in my life.
I've always had to say, props to you, Puexel. I've always said every year, like, I think there was a year, it may have been the Chrono Trigger year, or it was a year you were doing FF6 maybe, where I was just like, there's something very special about you are locked in, you are doing your thing on like a crazy hard strat in the final boss, and I was like, and there is a room behind you exploding, not being able to hear anything, and you're just locked in and still doing amazing things. I'm like, that's just really cool.
What a professional.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have anything they wanted to say or shout out or mention before we do a little Q&A maybe for the last little bit here?
I can't think of anything.
I think I'm good here.
I think it's Q&A time.
So there's a microphone over here. If anybody has a question they want to ask any of us in particular, just general questions, feel free to come on up and shout them out. And if not, we can conclude. That's also fine. I just want to say, we'll do a quick round of thanks and say where you all can find us and what we do and stuff like that. If you want an RPG Speedrunner badge ribbon... Oh, we do have a question. I'm sorry. No, come on. You're good.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, I didn't realize people were going to do the, like, not walk in front of the camera. That's very polite of you. No. Go ahead. We got a couple questions.
That's it.
What types of community members in RPG speedrunning would you say are the most valuable in general?
Okay, yeah, question is what types of community members are the most valuable? So I assume that would be kind of referencing like the people that do the routing or like the labbing, maybe versus the ones who actually do more of the actual runs. So
people that write guides. Guides are so valuable, and it takes a lot of work. And not even just a guide, but I would say a very well-written guide. I know, I don't know if you've read through like B-Dude's FF6 Pixel Remaster notes.
Oh, yeah.
But it's more than just, hey, do this, hey, do this. He has so many little things in there of like, make sure you watch your guild number at this, and this boss's attack is based on this, and here's some damage breakdowns. And B-Dude has amassed so much FF6 knowledge over the last however many years he's ran the game, that there's just a set of notes out there that just has that wealth of knowledge in it that's so valuable.
I want to say I actually low-key like really agree with you, because it's the guide makers, and like not just like the kind of like brief detail guide. Like I will say, like being able to write really detailed guide where everyone can follow it, and everyone kind of has like different learning styles, because there's some people who like cannot do video guides. I am one of those people who like I can kind of do video guides, but I do so much better like reading through a text guide and like perusing through like. I'm a very detail-oriented person, and like I'd like to know like as much details as I can, like getting into something. So like, huge shout out to the guide makers, because like I say for myself, I don't have patience to go through like like I've done like some pretty good guides, but it's just like I don't have patience to like make really detailed good guides, especially for beginners, because like generally notes are just generally tailored towards like people who know the game, but like making notes that are tailored towards beginners, like that's new.
And I guess my shout out there is for scientists, basically, like people that actually do the pretty kind of non-glorious and in a lot of cases just boring work associated with just trying to figure out how games work under the hood and just find out how to break them.
Yeah, it's definitely something where like, yeah, sometimes you get hooked on a route, like it's the route. Everybody does the route. But I know like every year there'll be a community FF9 race and people will be like, I'm doing this route. And like there was a community member, Steth, he's like, I'm doing the Steth route. We're like, what's the Steth route? People are like, don't do the Steth route. It's not better. He's just having fun with it.
I honestly just want to do a couple. I agree, and I've had experiences with the value of like a bunch of other folks, and I've routed some stuff myself, but I've never been one to really do much of the other things that folks were talking about. So glitch hunters, super important. I didn't find any of the glitches that were in like the Chained Echoes run that I learned, for example. That was all somebody else, and then I kind of tried to optimize from there. Guide creators, FF10 has one of the best guides I've ever seen. And then also FF10, but the folks who kind of peek under the hood, and like that game is a miracle. Like if you haven't watched Dr. Swellman's video about how the RNG was solved for that game, it is a wild ride, and it is so unbelievably cool that we basically know how everything works in that game now.
Yeah, I always loved the joke. I remember when Foxy got accepted into GDQ and I was learning the run, and our friend Foxy and Richard were like, do a race with us. I was like, I've never done the run. They're like, you can put in the game, load up the guide, and I promise you'll finish the run. You don't need any prior knowledge.
It's true. Just do exactly what it says, and you will not fail. And if you did, it's your own fault. And every time I've ever failed in that game, I've found the guide. I'm like, oh yeah, my bad.
Yeah, I will say like every type of community members value, from the tryhards, like world recce grinders, to like the casual runner, like all of these like build a community. But I think like like what Zig mentioned first is just like the really detailed guide writers is like what brings people in, and then those people bring in, they like come into a subset of like people.
Yeah. All right, next.
First, shout out to Final Fantasy X's voice glitch that happens midway through the run. That's always hilarious. And then I guess my second is, how do you choose like your couch and co-commentators? Like I know like with like Final Fantasy 7, 8, and other runs, like I know a lot of the times the couch can come in a big handy. I know with Final Fantasy 5 run, either AGDQ or last year SGDQ, I know that was a big thing that really helped out. So how do you guys kind of pick those folks out in the community?
So I didn't catch everything. Their voice glitch, the Final Fantasy X voice glitch.
Yeah, the one where everything like stutters, like after.
Oh yeah, the Jiskel voice glitch. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But then the main question was choosing commentators for your runs, and like what do you look for in a commentator, and how do you kind of choose? Is that good summary? Okay, yeah.
I could go first because I have this big problem when I submit runs to Frame Fatales. We have a very hard line restriction where only people who qualify for the Frame Fatale server can commentate. And for many of my runs, I'm off like many of my communities. I'm often the only Femme speedrunner, or like only know of like non-FF people. So my job is generally like. I would try to ask friends that I know to commentate. So for the recent example for my Mass Effect 2 run, I had Mike Wave and Corbin, and I will tell you, Corbin has not touched the game casually ever, and not for a long time. We did play Mass Effect Andromeda together, but that's a different story. And Mike Wave, of course, like he knows a lot about that game. He's better than me at it, and there's that. But a bit, like what makes like especially at GDQ like a good show is just like. Because it's a big charity event, like I know that, like, hey, I need to, like, we're like in reality, like a charity especially for GDQ, we're there to make money. So I like to like have the biggest balance, and like I always pick we're good friends, and I always like to pick her just because she knows how to kind of like fill in any dead air that happens between me and Mike, and she knows how to meme. If you've seen her just like. Walk up and just like bring these posters and like explain the entire mechanics of the final mission. So, and I want to reiterate, like, you don't have to bring commentators that know the game. Like, just try. You want to try to like find a style. Like, there's some people out there who are just like okay, like we have a commentary buddy system. You'll come in and they'll just like don't watch the run. Like this is especially true for like Silly Block or like. Really meme tier games, like they'll just tell you, don't watch the run. You're gonna be like the first react.
We had a great time with Bus Game this morning. They deliberately said, "Do not watch the game."
You're just there to be a reaction person. So like, you try to find out like what vibe you want like during your marathon run. Like I like for myself and know like what type of person you are. Like for myself, I'm more of like a chill, like standard RPG person where I'm chill. I'll try to inject humor. Like I try to do a combination, but I'm not as humorous of a person as I like, because I generally like more or less like derive it from other people who are more humorous. So like I just like a combination of the chill RPG vibe. People are nostalgic for Mass Effect 2, and then like just go from there. But again, like you don't have to pick commentators that have already ran the game. Like for those commentators who have not ran the game, I highly recommend that. If you're not telling them to like don't watch the run, which is also valid, make a really detailed guide of like what goes on, like the tricks, and then like especially like if you need someone to like help you explain like stuff like while you're focusing, like that can put a lot of weight on your shoulders. But I also will say that you don't need to explain like every little nitty-gritty detail in the marathon run. People will remember like the really funny parts.
Yeah. And if I can just kind of build off of that for a sec, because I've also had like that similar experience, and Flannel Cat is my go-to when I just kind of need somebody to sort of vibe with. And I found one thing that really helps if you do have like more of a blind commentator or someone who doesn't know the game super well is, as the runner, if you're planning to do a lot of the explaining, or even if one of your commentators is planning to do a lot of the explaining, having kind of like a person to naturally bounce that off of as part of the commentary makes explaining things so much easier. And not just explaining things, but explaining things in a very simple way that you would expect like the average marathon viewer to understand. So, if I'm doing the run and I can explain a mechanic to Flannel Cat in a way that she's going to understand in the moment, not knowing the run, or maybe even in the case of Small Saga, having never seen the game before, I can feel pretty confident that somebody watching on Twitch who hasn't really seen this game before will also understand it. So I just wanted to build off of that. I thought that was a really good observation. And we don't see a lot of that in RPG speedruns, honestly. I feel like there's room for more of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know for me, especially, like, I'll reference the Final Fantasy V run in that I had Foxy Jira and Wody be there. Foxy's my go-to. I mean, he's my best friend in speedrunning. We're always just on each other's couches. It just always works out that way. We meld well together. And Wody is somebody who wrote the initial guide for Final Fantasy V Picture Master with the MS Paint drawings. Oh, they were great. But it was very nice for me, at least, to have not only the three of us are all friends in the Final Fantasy community, so I know we meld together well. But it was nice, like I definitely, without a doubt, would not have survived that run without Wody behind me, looking up game facts guides on different, boss AIs for Final Fantasy V. So, like, having him there to, and I even like this with anything I speedrun, is at least having one person there that knows the game at least lets me, like, when I did Sly 4 earlier this week, having a Straba behind me where I was like, if I hit a point where I was a little flustered during the run because the monitor was way too dark on stage, and I was like, I've at least got someone behind me that I know if I'm like, I need a moment, I'm like, you got this.
Yeah.
Help me. And it's nice to have somebody that can at least have that.
Yeah.
You want to add, Poexel?
Everybody else has kind of said pretty much all of my thoughts, but I guess just wanted to echo that. Yeah, I think there is a lot of value to having commentators that aren't runners of the game themselves, because I think that a lot of my runs where I've had commentators like that, I feel like they've kind of helped keep me honest, I guess, as far as kind of representing because an attitude I like to go into a marathon run for like GDQ or RPG Limit Break is that the vast majority of the people watching have never seen the run before. A lot of them probably have played the game or at least know about it if they're watching a speed run of it, but a lot of them have not actually watched the run before. And if I if there's something kind of important something that's very different about speedrunning the game compared to playing it casually that I just kind of take for granted at this point and forget to explain in the commentary. Usually one of my commentators will bring that up or something like that. So yeah, and I've filled that role on a lot. Like I know I was on couch for Moonblaze's Chained Echoes run last year, even though I haven't played the game myself because I'm still waiting for the physical disc to come out. But
soon TM.
Yeah.
But,
UltimateSoon.tm. Yeah. I just want to.
But I made sure not to let any of the not so subtle references to like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI go unrecognized.
That was actually part of the gimmick that we planned before that run. Was we were gonna have Poexel there just be like, hey, doesn't that kind of remind you of a game that you've speedran before?
Yeah, like I did make a point of saying ribbit every time you talked about Glenn.
Yeah, exactly. I think one last thing I just want to say, and then we can move on to the next question, is ultimately at the end of the day, you get to choose who is on your couch. So whatever kind of style or whatever kind of vibe that you want to go for, if it's your run, it's your run.
Yeah.
So
and
make sure
if you want to do
is
solo,
reflective.
that's totally cool too.
Yeah, and just make sure it's reflective of what you want to get out of it. And that's, sometimes it takes a few times to learn what that is, but, Yeah, and we have next question.
So my question was, I know a lot of like the older RPGs, like you can't really find those, like you kind of were like trying to get them. So getting into it, is it better? Because like sometimes you're like, oh, this version is like the speed running one, to do it through the physical and try to like do that, or to do it through like virtual console or stuff, because it probably works way different than like if you're doing Octopath on like a Switch versus trying to do it like a PC or something.
Sure.
So the question's kind of that is which field you feel like is the better, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess kind of like how do you obtain a copy of the game, and how do you pick a version, and different things like that.
Because there probably might not be like the speed run for your position, I guess.
True.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to be like, oh, I want to get into this speed run, but okay, I gotta obtain the game, or if it doesn't exist on like a virtual console or something.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I can just speak to that a little bit, and I mean, I don't know every game under the sun. I try to have been a good student and learn as I look at submissions and things like that. I would say just do what you want to do, and if the leaderboard is more like there's 20 runs of this category and like you're one of 2 runs in this other category, and maybe it's not the most optimal version to run, but just do it anyway and submit it if that's what you have access to, because a good marathon organizer, a good games committee person will know how to figure out like why that is the way that it is, or maybe they'll ask you if they don't know, so that would be my big takeaway. Sometimes financial stuff, or even importing, honestly, sometimes like there are people that speedrun games that have probably not been released in the United States, or not released in the way that is the most optimal to run when you're talking about older games. So I think it sort of does depend on the game, but if you really feel passionately about it, just submit it in the way that is the most accessible to you, I think is what I would say. Anyone want to add anything to that?
I was going to say, I know for me, an experience of learning the Pixel Remasters lately, like, especially when you look at those ones, like Final Fantasy IV it's got a Game Boy release, it's got the Super Nintendo, it's got the 3D remake, you've got so many versions of that game out there. And I know especially for, 4, 5, and 6, even though, like, the Pixel Remasters aren't the most popular, a lot of people that run the originals don't want to run them. They like the originals. But I'll find myself a lot of the time still asking questions about the Pixel Remasters and stuff in the normal, to people that just run the normal game, because they know so much about the normal game, and a lot of it still translates over. It's like, all right, I don't know that version, but here's how it works in the original. You could try this X, Y, and Z. So even if your version doesn't have a lot of resources out there, there's probably enough people with resources in the other versions that you can kind of stitch some stuff together and figure it out.
Just don't play the PS1 anthology version.
Do not play the PS1 version. They're so bad.
I don't have as much as to say to it, but it's just just basically like speedrun on whichever version. I've only had the experience of like Octopath, like having just like Switch, digital, physical, or whatever, and I know friends who like intentionally just like, I'm not gonna buy the PC version because they just want to like flex. they just turn it around and there's like, I'm just flexing on the PC nerds.
Yeah. Because I don't really have a ton to add to that too, but I mean it comes back to what I was saying earlier about well, I guess not really that, but I like running games in English, even if Japanese or some other language is faster, just because that's what I speak and what the people that are watching me speak. Like I'll only run a game in Japanese if there's like exclusive glitches that I really, really, really want to be part of my run, and then I guess and then just assuming you're planning on doing capturing and streams as opposed to just doing it purely on your own too, just convenience factor is a thing too. Like the only type of game I've really run where that's been a thing is Game Boy, just because there's a lot of ways to play original Game Boy games now, and like for me personally, the Super Game Boy is is kind of the most effective because I have a nice streaming setup for Super Nintendo and I can just reuse that for Game Boy. As opposed to having to change a lot of stuff around to do like Game Boy Player.
Yeah, there's a lot of just like little quirky things as well, even among like Super Mario RPG Remake is a perfect example. So it runs fastest if you put it on the Switch's system memory, if you're playing it off of the physical release version, or if you, like I did, accidentally put it on your SD card for months at a time without realizing it, and then suddenly, I just free time save, I guess. But yeah, like you kind of learn the ins and outs of stuff like that. Don't always assume the PC version is the fastest or most accessible version either. I know you're a big advocate for the PS5 version of the Pixel Remasters right now.
I think I heard PS5 for the Pixel, like one of the games, I don't remember which, like the Pixel Remasters, like PS5 is actually better than PC.
They are faster.
Yeah. So do your homework, I guess, as well. But if something is out of reach but you have an accessible option, I think we would all agree, just kind of play the game in the way that is most convenient for you. And practice is also another thing. It's very easy to practice on like emulators and things like that, and set up save states and things like that. As
retro
opposed
games
to
are expensive now.
Retro games are also expensive.
Do not feel ashamed to like play on emulator, because those retro games are expensive.
I mean, even just as like general speedrunning advice, I always tell people, it's like, I've seen people get really hung up on version, and I've seen people really like they'll look at the game, like, I want to learn this game, and then they'll look and they're like, I don't have a PS2 for that version. I can't get world record. I won't learn it. And it's like, well, just play what you want and just enjoy it and have fun with it. And maybe if you really like it, you can graduate to that version eventually. But I always hope, but just get into it in any way possible.
And if you love a game that much to invest in it, it'll come with time, but don't like put off learning it just because it can't be world record or optimal.
Yeah, like I don't have a PlayStation TV, I know is a thing with some games now too. Those are not cheap, and
I bought one of those solely to play A Bug's Life.
Yeah, I could say I toyed with like Speedruns weekend, and then I looked at the PS TV prices that I would have to buy from a friend. I was like,
Yeah.
and yeah, of course, I just will reiterate it. Like, don't put your self-worth in the leaderboard. You don't need a leaderboard to.
Absolutely.
You don't need a leaderboard to speedrun.
Yep. All right. If there's no other questions, maybe we'll just do a little wrap up. I'll just kind of go first. So again, my name is Moonblaze Wolf. I stream mainly RPGs. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/MoonblazeWolf. Right now, I'm kind of learning a slew of Final Fantasy games. I think I've convinced myself to learn Final Fantasy 16 in the next little bit.
I don't want to learn that.
It's really, really good. It's just I suck at action games, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's me.
Yes, I am Zik3. You can find me at twitch.tv/Zik3. I speedrun various RPGs, platformers, all sorts of different games, anything I can get my hands on. I'm actually going to be learning a lot of Final Fantasy IV for the upcoming Final Fantasy Relay, which is another really cool event to check out.
That's why I'm learning 16.
So I'm Sanjan. You can find me at twitch.tv/Sanjan_. One day I'll get the actual name itself. But I basically kind of like speedrun whatever like I feel like. Sometimes I'll have periods where I don't really feel like speedrunning, which is kind of like right now just because I'm busy. But I won't be continuing with Mass Effect. For those of you who are excited to see me play more Mass Effect, I don't think I'll be doing much of that, unfortunately, but I will be learning and playing Chrono Cross.
Hey.
So stay tuned.
And I'm Poexel to twitch.tv/Poexel, PUWEXIL. And I don't know. I'm kind of I need to find some new games to learn, and still working that out. So this time will tell. But yeah, I mean, I've been speedrunning RPGs for 13 years now, and I find it kind of interesting that my choice in games has gotten progressively older over time because like the very first game RPG I finished a speedrun of was Kingdom Hearts 2 on the PlayStation 2. Then I did some PlayStation 1 stuff like Final Fantasy 7 and 9, Parasite Eve, and then SNES stuff. Then starting to dabble in NES and Game Boy. I mean, that's probably where it's going to end, though, because then we're starting to get into like Atari and stuff that's a little up there. But yeah.
And I just want to say thank you to all of you. This was my idea, and then I bullied all of you, or asked very politely in some cases to join me up here, just so we could spend some time talking to people at Games Done Quick about RPGs. And Games Done Quick doesn't always, I think, has a misconception sometimes that it's a lot of platformers and other kinds of games. And I know there's a lot of really good classic Games Done Quick RPG speedruns. Usually finale type stuff, but not always. And you can always find some good RPGs on the GDQ schedule. So I'm glad we were able to be here.
Especially if you're a night owl.
Especially if you're a night owl.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, thank you all for coming, and we really appreciate you.